Hey there, and welcome to Weeb Novel Audiobook, your hub for epic fanfics, original stories, and thrilling adventures brought to life. Make sure to subscribe for regular updates and swing by my Patreon for early access and exclusive mature content. Now, sit back and enjoy the journey.
Rather than returning to Green Baby, Darren decided to head to Male Green Street where his home was. He unlocked the door, walked straight to the kitchen, pulled out a bottle of orange juice and began gulping it down. He noisily made his way to his bedroom and sat on the edge of his bed. Once he finished the entire paper bottle of orange juice, he threw it into the waste bin, scoring a perfect point as it entered straight in the empty basket. Then, he took off his shoes, unbuttoned his shirt and slumped down on his work chair, ready to begin a hopefully successful Bitcoin purchase session. With a mechanical slicing sound, the purple floating interface appeared before him. Darren lifted his fingers and pressed them against his chin, his gaze fixed on the glowing numbers displaced by the interface. It was slightly cold in his old room thanks to the fan he'd installed after paying the electric bill. The dim light of the room cast long shadows on the walls. The only sound in the quiet evening was the faint hum of the said fan above. He had placed his phone flat on the desk beside him, but his focus was entirely on the digital projections hovering before his eyes. The Bitcoin investment window displayed itself, the numbers crisp and clear. Bitcoin investment window price presently, $0.4/BTC price in future, $50,000/BTC. That's quite a significant fall in a few days, Darren thought out loud. No wonder people were spamming the Fugly Duckling account again yesterday for giving them false hope after the initial rise. They had all thought that Bitcoin was going to rise on and on from there, and they'd went on to make huge purchases of the cryptocurrency. But just a few days later there was another fall. Why were they blaming Duckling? He couldn't see how that was his problem. Or his fault. If there was one thing business every day and that hot blonde reporter, Brooklyn whatever was right about, it was that Bitcoin was very inconsistent and unpredictable. Rises, January 2011, major rise, $6/BTC April 2011, minor rise, $9/BTC June 2011, major rise, $31/BTC, tap to see further rises for more than 1 year, crashes, March 2011, minor crash, $4.3/BTC August 2011, major crash, $2/BTC, tap to see further crashes for more than 1 year, your investment invested, $82,500 profit, $928,125. Darren exhaled through his nose, then swiped the interface to the left. His personal wallet account came into view. His expenditure was displayed before him, after spending $1,018,000 on the house property and resources, $9,000 on clearing his student loans, and another $1,000 for Mrs. Edwards' purse, plus $3,000 on personal belongings and purchases. He was still sitting on a comfortable balance of $8,596,869. That was awesome. $8,598,869 left him with a good amount to invest as lavishly as he wanted. If he wanted to be risky, heck, he could purchase Bitcoin worth $8 million and just casually manage the remaining $500,000 until a major rise. What's stopping him? Ding. The sound of the investor's system interrupted his thoughts. A new notification popped up. Lavish investments are allowed but must be regulated. Present investments can also affect future growth of the cryptocurrency, leading to a change in its expected rise in the future. This change could be good or bad but will eventually lead to a matrix in the currency system. This event is known as a financial paradox. Darren narrowed his eyes, tapping his fingers against his knee. A financial paradox. He muttered. That meant that the more he invested, the more likely he was to influence the market itself. If he went too heavy, it could lead to an artificial inflation or an early correction, possibly ruining the natural course of Bitcoin's growth. Too much investment could alter history itself. He took a moment to let that sink in, then spoke to the system. Regulate my next Bitcoin purchase. Make sure I stay within safe limits. Another ding. Advised purchase, $1,000,000 limit, $2,000,000,000. Anything beyond $2 million increases the risk of causing a financial paradox. Darren rubbed his chin, thinking. I see. He went ahead and opened a new investment window. Make new investment. There are no investment drafts. New investment can be initiated. A confirmation window appeared. Amount of Bitcoin to purchase, $___________________________. Darren stayed silent as he thought. Well, since 1 million is the advised amount, and 2 million is the limit, I guess I'll go with 1 million. His eyes gleamed. And 500,000. Ha! He chuckled. Right in the middle. Being safe and also taking risks as investors do. Ding. UVE earned a character bonus. Darren grinned. You taught me well, system. Then, the final confirmation appeared. Are you sure you want to purchase Bitcoin worth $1,500,000 at 40 cents per BTC, estimated holdings, 3,750,000 BTC? Without hesitation, he raised a finger and pressed confirm. The interface refreshed, calculations running in real time. Investment successful, BTC purchased, 3,750,000. Current portfolio value, $1,500,000. Estimated profit at next major rise, $22,500,000. Darren exhaled and leaned back against the chair, his fingers interlocking behind his head. Now we wait for the next major rise. Somewhere else. Holy shit. Holy fucking shit. A chair scraped violently against the floor as Andy Nashville bolted up from his desk, sending his coffee sloshing onto his keyboard. He didn't even care. His eyes were locked on his laptop screen, pupils dilated in pure shock. He snatched the laptop off the desk and sprinted down the hallway of the financial firm. Sir. Sir. It's Duckling. He burst into his boss's office, panting, waving the laptop like a madman. Mr. Sakamoto frowned at the sudden intrusion. Andy, what the hell are you? He did it again. Andy shouted, nearly shoving the laptop into his face. The boss's expression changed instantly as he snatched the device and scanned the data flashing on the screen. His jaw dropped. Impossible. He whispered. But there it was. Another massive Bitcoin transaction. Andy grinned wildly, running a hand through his disheveled hair. That madman. He did it again. Andy Nashville bolted from his seat like a man possessed. The coffee spilled all over, his chair nearly toppled to the ground as he grabbed his laptop and sprinted toward the CEO's office, his heart hammering. He did it again. He skidded to a halt in front of the polished oak doors and barely knocked before barging in. The office was as grand as ever, dimly lit, lined with bookshelves filled with financial records and prestigious awards. Behind the sleek black marble desk sat Mr. Kaito Sakamoto, dressed in an immaculate charcoal suit, fingers steepled beneath his chin. His dark eyes flickered up, radiating mild annoyance at being interrupted again. Andy, what the hell are you? He did it again. Andy shouted, nearly shoving the laptop into his face. Sakamoto's gaze sharpened. Fugly duckling. Andy nodded furiously and pointed to the screen on the laptop with excitement. The moment Sakamoto read the words, his breath hitched. Fugly duckling just purchased Bitcoin worth $1,500,000. Sakamoto's fingers clenched against the desk. Am I seeing that right? He asked Andy. Yes you are, sir. You are. This man, he's amazing. $1.5 million. Sakamoto's jaw tightened, and for a moment, he just stared at the screen, unable to process what he was seeing. Last time it was almost $100,000 and now, $1 million. That's a 1,500% increase from his last investment. It is baffling that he is still investing. Sakamoto muttered, his voice laced with disbelief. His hand slowly clenched into a fist. Even after the crashes. Even after the dips. Even after everything, he's still going all in. This was no reckless fool throwing money away. This was a man who knew something. A man who saw past the short-term volatility. A man with conviction. This was a true businessman. Sakamoto couldn't take it anymore. He could not last another day without knowing who this man was and having him under his firm. He exhaled sharply and then turned to his employee. Andy. Give me updates concerning his identity and scouting. Now. Andy pushed his glasses up. There hasn't been any worthy updates, sir. We're still combing through purchase records, but he remains a ghost, sir. His wallet is unlinked to the crypto tracker account. No name, no Gmail, no number, there's nothing to track him with. Sakamoto gritted his teeth. His fingers drummed aggressively against the marble surface. I know you're testing me, great duckling sir. You want to know my drive. You want to discern how badly I wish to work for you. I won't give up. I don't care what it takes. His voice was directed at Andy. I want this man found. If we have to hire hackers, we'll hire them. If we have to bribe someone at the exchange, we will. Get me his name. His address. His face. Andy, you hear me? Andy swallowed. Yes, sir. Sakamoto's fingers pressed against his temple. If he's willing to invest this much on something everyone else doubts, imagine what he'll do if he has my firm behind him. I will make this man the greatest businessman to grace this country. He has rekindled a passion in me, truly. Tell me everything you need and you will have it. No one else can have him, Andy. His eyes flashed dangerously. If Ryan Anders and the rest of the bastards at MWMO gets to him before we do. Andy stiffened. He knew what that meant. Failure was not an option. I will be on it right away, Mr. Sakamoto. Meanwhile, speaking of the MWMO, in another high-rise office, Ryan Anders sat at his desk, his fingers idly clicking a silver ballpoint pen against his palm. He clenched his jaw, gnashing his teeth continuously as he thought. The CEO of Moon Wealth Management Offices was leaned back in his leather chair, his piercing blue eyes locked onto his laptop screen. Once again, there it was. Another time this mystery man has brought the online business world on its feet. Fugly Duckling just purchased Bitcoin worth $1,500,000. He inhaled deeply, a smirk ghosting his lips. So you're still at it, huh? He turned his head slightly. Any updates from the IT team? Standing near the doorway, his secretary, Amelia, the sharp-dressed woman in her late 20s, shook her head. Nothing. His wallet remains completely detached from any registered accounts. We can't trace an official owner. Ryan's smirk disappeared. His eyes darkened. No official owner. No traceable Gmail. No registered number. A complete enigma. His fingers tapped against the desk in thought. There's that young hacker we once caught tampering with our server, what was his name? Rico Evans, sir. Yes. He's preparing for his court case, isn't he? Anders purred condescendingly. Obviously he will lose. Phone him. Tell him we'll be willing to drop all the charges if he helps us find out who this man is. Right away, sir. Amelia hurried out of the office, but not before once again inviting predatory stares from her boss as she left. He lowered his eyes to the screen after, peering at the notification. This madman. I want him under my thumb as soon as possible. Multiple comments kept popping up. In his room, Darren casually scrolled through the comments, and completely couldn't help the amusement he got watching the hysteria unfolding in the comment section of Crypto Tracker. Fugly Duckling had struck again. And just like before, the internet was losing its mind. At Deegan Investor, this guy has lost his damn mind. $1.50 million. Bro, what are you even thinking? At Satoshi Knows Best, imagine being this confident while the rest of us are panicking. LMAO. At Mr. Moneymaker, he's back. Fugly is back, boys. All in. At Wallet Warrior, bro saw Bitcoin dip and said, hold my beer. At Handsome Duckling, I give up. He's the better duckling. Then there were others completely hating on him, saying that he's just an all-risk investor. Some kept talking about Scottish Panda, comparing both of them, claiming that Scottish Panda was a smarter kind of investor. He didn't know what was the deal about this Scottish Panda guy. He'd noticed some jabs the businessman had thrown his way, but he didn't care. He didn't give a shit about him. As for the comments, it's real funny watching people opinionated on something, when you know the unchanging truth. Darren leaned back, amused. But then, he suddenly got another notification popped up at the top of his phone screen. Cheyenne Lam has started following Fugly Duckling. Darren's eyebrows rose slightly. Wait. What? That couldn't be the real Cheyenne Lam, right? Cheyenne L. Bordeaux, the heiress of the Bordeaux Corporation, the second largest empire company in the state? He then saw comments, many, being shocked that this mystery man was now being followed by the Cheyenne Lam. Fanboys and simps filled the comment section of that broadcast notification. Hold on, it actually could be her. Curious, he tapped her profile. Her display picture was a sleek, high-resolution image of a woman in her late 30s, dressed in a form-fitting black business suit and was sitting on a throne-like chair. She had very beautiful eyes, silver and enchanting, faint cheekbones, an oval tender face and glossy dark hair styled in bangs and cut at neck length. Beneath her picture were several highlighted banners, information of her company, her assets, her personal information that she permitted to the audience and other stuff concerning her business, Bordeaux Corporation, finance, real estate, luxury assets, Lam & Co. Investment Group, high-stakes investment opportunities, men buy-in, $10 million. Darren then noticed that her profile had a golden tick next to her name. Well, that's fancy, he thought. Seeing it was selectable, Darren tapped it. A small window loaded and showed an explanation of the golden tick. Golden tick, ultra-verified billionaire user, exclusive to business moguls, influential CEOs, and ultra-high net worth individuals. Vain things like these are pretty cool sometimes, Darren muttered. If I ever claim the Fugly Duckling account, I'd want a golden tick. It makes the blue one seem inferior. His eyes lowered the next option, see more golden tick accounts? Darren was just about to tap yes when dong. His system snapped into existence before him. This sound was more terrifying than the usual light-hearted ding the system usually made. It sounded like something bad was happening, or was about to happen. And indeed, that was the case. The usual purple-colored interface had turned blood red and warning flashed across his interface. Warning. Warning, hacking attempt discerned. Someone is trying to breach your Bitcoin Profit wallet. Darren's smirk vanished. What? His fingers froze over the keyboard of his phone and he flung the device aside. His eyes narrowed. What do you mean hacking? He even got a notification on his phone from the Bitcoin purchase website that he didn't really use, asking him if he wanted to withdraw the money he'd just invested. His system's alarms continued to blare louder and louder, notifying him of the active hacking attempt on his Bitcoin Profit wallet. Darren tried to maintain composure, his fingers drummed against his desk, mind reeling. The system educated me on this. There are steps I can take and the system can only implement them if I give it the direct order. What was it? Another notification flashed on his phone screen. Security bypassed, portfolio is being returned to cache to be withdrawn. What kind of skilled hacker is this? They'd already broken past his security. With a burst of urgency, he remembered. System, secure the wallet and engage multi-layer encryption. Now. Beginning emergency lockdown. A second later, his screen flooded with updates. Firewall, reinforced multi-layer encryption, engaged IP cloaking, active wallet integrity remains intact. Hacking attempt repelled. There was silence first. Darren glanced at his phone, waiting. Then a notification appeared, withdrawal has been successfully cancelled. The tension in Darren's shoulders eased slightly and he let out a sigh of relief. Whoever it was, they weren't getting in. But that wasn't enough. Someone had the audacity to try and breach his security. He needed to know who. System, identify the hacker. Trace back, in progress, lines of code cascaded across the screen, his system tracing the breach back to its source. Coordinates, network paths, and encrypted tunnels unraveled one by one, until finally hacker located. Would you like to view? Darren didn't hesitate. Show me. The screen flickered, shifting from data streams to an unauthorized access into the hacker's device. The almighty investor system had breached their camera feed, but the image was obstructed. A strip of tape covered the lens. Darren's system overrode the interference, enhancing the resolution just enough to form a hazy image. A faint outline appeared. The hacker was a woman. Red hair. A choker necklace. Some cleavage. Darren's eyes narrowed. He knew her. He remembered the day he'd gone to Dataforge. It was that computer chick. Kara. Did she know he was Fugly Duckling? Or was she just trying to steal from the most talked about business investor in online trade? His jaw tightened. System, connect me to the laptop's speaker. A moment later, a number materialized on the screen. And after some calculations, the system gained access to the speaker. Kara was still tapping her way on her keyboard, trying to reclaim control of the wallet. For hell's sake. What kind of firewall is this? She grinned. This duckling guy sure has some powerful tech nerds to push me out of control like that. Then click. She heard a sharp inhale from the other end. Silence. She looked around. What the fuck was that? Kara. Ah. She yelped, recoiling backwards and staring at her computer. Darren's voice was calm, yet edged with steel. Kara DeAndre. That's your full name, isn't it? A beat of silence. Kara stared at the monitor, her heart beating. Who is this? Darren leaned back in his chair, eyes fixed on the flickering screen. You shouldn't tape your camera with cheap adhesive. Leaves too much static interference. Kara's breath hitched. Oh. Are you, the duckling guy? Darren didn't answer that. You're in your apartment right now. Midtown. 4th floor. Second window from the left. More silence. A nervous chuckle. That's so. She looked around, then got more tape and tried to cover the camera more. But the system had already tapped into a security camera installed on her wall. Darren had a new angle to watch her from. You know, for someone who tried to break into my wallet, you're surprisingly sloppy. She giggled, masking her unease. I wouldn't call it breaking in. More like, knocking politely. Darren scoffed. With a crowbar. She clicked her tongue. Okay, maybe a little force. He ignored her attempt at humor. Kara DeAndre. 26. Graduated top of your class in cybersecurity, but never took a corporate job. He let that hang before adding, too rebellious for structure, huh? A pause. She then replied, I prefer the term independent contractor. Darren didn't laugh. Right. Independent. Like that stunt with the federal database last year. Kara stiffened. You know about that. From what is right before me, it seems I know everything. You've made a mistake, Kara. Her breathing slowed. She was finally realizing just how deep she'd dug herself. Darren's voice dropped an octave. Now, here's what we're going to do. Kara swallowed. I'm listening. You're going to meet me. Tonight. You bring your laptop, and we have a talk. A sharp inhale. What if I don't? Darren's next words were a whisper of finality. Then you'll find out just how much I actually know about you. Silence. Then Kara spoke, text me the location. A smirk tugged at Darren's lips. How stupid do you think I am? I know all your hacker antics. Texting would help you trace the message. You want to find me before I find you. Kara gulped. You're smart. I'll give you that. But every move you make from now will be moves I tell you to make. Understood? Yes, she answered, her voice less brave than before. Your first move. Castle Cottage. Meet me there. And with that, he cancelled the connection. After numerous nightly discussions with Sandy in this place, Castle Cottage was quickly becoming a regular for Darren. Which is why he chose it for his meeting with his cunning hacker. Being in a familiar place gave him an edge. Although he already didn't need it, he still had to be smart with this girl. The dim glow of many hanging lanterns bathed Castle Cottage in a warm, golden hue. The rustic outdoor restaurant sprawled beneath the open sky with the canopy of vines and fairy lights stretching over wooden tables. The scent of grilled meats and fresh bread wafted through the crisp night air, mingling with the simple noise of quiet conversation. Kara stepped inside, her fingers gripping the strap of her bag tighter than usual. Her jittery eyes darted around the restaurant, scanning each face, each table, each shadowed corner. This was the place. Mr. Duckling had told her to come here. Any of these people here could be him. A man. A child. A woman. They might have used a voice modulator. Her nerves gnawed at her, but she masked it well. She was dressed the way she always did, casual with a gothic edge. A black oversized hoodie hung loosely over her frame, unzipped just enough to reveal a fitted, dark tank top underneath. The silver chain around her neck gleamed against her pale skin, and her ripped skinny jeans clung snugly to her legs, tucking into a pair of heavy combat boots. Her nails were painted a deep crimson, the same shade as her tousled red hair, which cascaded over one shoulder in messy waves. She carried a satchel slung across her body, the weight of her laptop resting against her hip. Letting out a sharp exhale, she rubbed her arms and a chill ran down her spine. Everything about this whole situation made her uneasy. What have you gotten yourself into now, Kara? $1.5 million Bitcoin purchase. It was none of her business. She didn't have to go hacking into it. Why do I always do this? She bit her lip, glancing over her shoulder once more before sighing and finding a table near the edge of the restaurant, where she could see everyone but remain unnoticed herself. However, there was one person she couldn't see. Darren Steele. Standing by the shadows, watching her. The system had done its job. Secured the wallet. Traced the hacker. Now, it was time for him to do his. Kara was aflutter, though she tried to hide it behind nonchalance. The way she kept scanning the crowd, shifting in her seat, glancing at her surroundings like she expected someone to tap her shoulder at any moment. She was nervous. Which was good. She should be. Unfortunately, as he knew, the system couldn't read emotions beyond their direct relation to him. If she was afraid of him, it would tell him. If she was only afraid of the situation itself, it remained unreadable. That meant he had to rely on his perception alone. And perception told him Kara wasn't just scared. She was curious. She wasn't the type to be easily intimidated, which meant her nervousness wasn't purely fear, it was intrigue, excitement even. She was a wild card. Heck, most hackers were. Living her life on the edge, stretching her arms to see just how much she could reach without getting in trouble. He saw it in the way her fingers tapped against the wooden table, in the way her teeth toyed with her lower lip, in the way her eyes scanned but never truly settled. Well, every day's for the thief and one day's for the owner. Darren moved forward. Starting to become impatient, Caro lifted her head and saw a young man approaching. Her fingers instantly stilled. Her eyes locked onto his figure as he stepped toward her table, each slow stride measured and deliberate. He didn't blink. Didn't look away. He let her take in his face, let her remember him. Caro furrowed her brow slightly, trying to remember where she had seen that face. Then her breath trapped in sudden realization. "You," she said. Darren didn't sit yet. He simply stood in front of her, hands in his pocket, looking at her. Kara's head tilted, her gaze raking over him now, studying him. He could see the exact moment recognition deepened in her expression, the way her lips quirked up, then curled inward as if suppressing a grin. She leaned back in her chair, crossing one leg over the other, tapping her nails against her thigh. "No way," she breathed out, shaking her head in amusement. "You're fugly duckling." Darren's expression didn't shift. "So you didn't know it was me?" "I had no idea," she admitted, still shaking her head. "This must be the greatest coincidence." "Wow." Her eyes flickered over him again, slower this time. "I know I saw you once, but..." She watched him use his masculine arm to pull the chair backwards, then sat down before her. Her cheeks flushed red. "Wow." Darren ignored her sultry gaze. "Give me your laptop," he said. Kara blinked. So direct. "What, no foreplay?" Darren extended his hand expectantly. She sighed, rolling her eyes as she unzipped her bag and slid the laptop onto the table. "You weren't this good looking when I first saw you." Darren ignored her, opening the laptop and running the system scan. Seeing multiple security setups, he turned it to her to unlock it all. "First you exchange $200,000 in my cyber store and then you purchase almost $2 million worth of Bitcoin. Who really are you? A money launderer?" She smiled at him teasingly as she handed him back the laptop. Darren went through it. As expected, nothing on the device gave her access to his funds. Everything was locked down. His firewalls were impenetrable, his transactions untraceable. But what was on her laptop made him pause. The system displayed a list. Kara's access logs, corporate financial records, top companies, private security feeds, highly restricted zones, banking systems, capable of infiltration but left untouched, personal data breaches, extensive, but seemingly for curiosity rather than crime. Darren glanced at her. This girl had access to so many powerful companies and corporations. She didn't tamper with them, sure, because that would turn her into a national-level criminal. But still, the fact that she had access to them was impressive. Kara raised an eyebrow. "Hey, are you done there? That's supposed to be private, you know." Darren shut the laptop, meeting her gaze. "So was my Bitcoin wallet." She pouted. "Ugh, still just as cold, I see." Once the system finished its scan, Darren leaned back slightly, his gaze locked at Kara. "You're a great hacker," he admitted. Kara, surprised at his compliment, grew shy for a moment and looked away. "I am good at what I do." "I can see that." She tilted her head, becoming defensive. "Is that it? Look, I get it, you're laying low, right? Trying to keep things quiet? I totally understand. Friends come around, the press too. I completely get it. You're trying to focus on the bag, no distractions." So I'll shut my mouth. I can be quiet. See. She zipped her lips with her fingers, then gave a cheeky thumbs up. Darren just stared at her. She stared back. Neither of them spoke. Seconds passed. Then more. Kara's eyes twitched slightly, her fingers curling against the table. Then, her eyes started to redden. She exhaled sharply and gave up. Okay, maybe I can't stay quiet. Darren barely reacted. Not only are you going to keep your mouth shut, but you're going to make up for this by doing what I say. Kara narrowed her eyes, sensing the serious moment. She leaned in slightly. Is this a sex thing? Darren stared blankly at her. She's crazy. In his mind, he face-palmed. Saying nothing to that, he put both hands in his pockets once more and got on his feet. Come. Let's go. Kara blinked. Huh. You're coming with me. She hesitated before grabbing her bag, slipping her laptop inside as she rose to her feet. Come with you where? Darren turned, already walking. Kara sighed, following after him. You really need to start elaborating, you know. Darren didn't say anything, he just continued further towards the road where cars kept dashing through. Kara stared at him in disbelief. Mr. Duckling? Mr. Duckling. He didn't answer, he just kept walking. She lowered her head and sighed. That handsome son of a bitch. Then she hurried after him. The front door swung open and Kara stepped inside first before Darren followed, slipping the house keys into his pockets. Kara's eyes widened at the place. A grand foyer with polished floors, a curved staircase, and a chandelier that looked like it could crush a man if it ever decided to drop. And was that? She sniffed the air. Vanilla. That was the scent of vanilla in the air alongside something even more expensive. She turned a slow circle, taking it all in. Okay, what the hell, she said. You are actually batshit rich. I'm lost for words. She looked at him. Should I be worried? Are you secretly building a Batmobile in the basement? Even though he approved of the joke, Darren ignored her as he took off the coat he'd been wearing and hung it on the coat hanger by the door. As he did, the sound of footsteps echoed loudly, coming basically out of nowhere. Kara jerked, eyes darting toward the source of the sound. An older woman emerged from the stairs in a crisp housekeeping uniform. Her hair was pulled into a severe bun, and her face was lined with the kind of sharp discipline that came from years of running a household with an iron grip. Her gaze flicked between them, landing on Kara with a cool, assessing stare. Darren glanced over. Kara, this is Gladys. Gladys, Kara. Gladys gave Kara a look that could freeze lava. Darren turned to Kara with a more serious expression. Gladys is my housekeeper. Which means she's the boss of the place. She's very particular. Do whatever Gladys says. Kara blinked. Wait, whatever she says. What if she asks me to scrub the floors with a toothbrush? Darren just walked off, heading to the dispenser to get a cold drink of water. Kara turned back to Gladys and forced a nervous smile. Hi. She gave a small wave. Gladys did not return the greeting. Instead, she narrowed her eyes in a way that suggested she could see straight into Kara's soul and did not like what she found there. Kara's smile thinned. She slowly turned and walked away. Okay, she certainly doesn't like me. Darren, now at the dining table, gestured toward it. Put your bag and laptop here. Kara scoffed. Oh, so we're getting straight to business, huh? No tour? I thought Gladys was the particular one. She huffed dramatically as she pulled out her laptop and Saturday, what room am I even staying in for the night? As she opened the computer, another thought hit her. Hey, Mr. Duckling, do you have a pool? Boy, I could really use a pool. Concentrate, Darren said, walking toward her. Okay, she muttered, turning on the computer. So what's this job you're hiring me for? Darren pulled out a chair and sat across from her. His expression turned serious. I need you to hack into the Red Fang Association's secret account. Kara's fingers hovered over her keyboard. Slowly, she looked up at him. Excuse me. You didn't hear what I said? Darren asked genuinely. Kara shut her laptop. Nope. Nope, nope, nope. Absolutely not. I am not getting on the bad side of the Red Fang Association. I do my best not to mess with shady people, and Red Fang are really shady people. She narrowed her eyes. What the hell are you even doing messing with them? Not your concern, Darren said flatly. Oh, but it is my concern, Kara countered. Because if I get caught, I get to be very dead. That is extremely my business. Darren leaned back, watching her. Then he said, state a price. Kara paused. Huh. State your price, Darren repeated. Her fingers twitched. She sat up straighter, thought of it for a moment before responding, 10,000. Done. Kara blinked. Wait, what? 15,000, she tested. Agreed. Her jaw slackened. What the okay? 20,000. Agreed. She narrowed her eyes. 40,000. Darren frowned. You had 3 chances. The price is set at 20,000. Kara exhaled, shaking her head. Damn. You're too good at this. She grinned. Fine. 20 it is. Darren nodded. I'll be going to one of their lairs to make a payment. But I need an assurance in case things go south. That's where you come in. Kara cracked her knuckles. All right. Let me work my magic. Darren let out a sigh. Normally, he would have let the system handle something like this. It was already skilled at hacking, flawless, efficient, and undetectable. But this job required the skill of a human hacker. He needed a kind of precision that only a human could have. And this had to be a 2-person job. He and the system were one. As she set to work, Darren's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and saw it was Sandy. He answered. Hey, Darren. Sandy's voice was warm. Sandy, Darren replied with the same tone. How've you been? I been great. Really great. I came by to visit but you weren't at home. I was just really excited and I wanted to thank you. Because of your advice to have patience, I actually made a profit from Bitcoin last week. One of the very few who did. Really? I'm glad to hear that, Sandy, Darren said. Thank you. And hey, Fugly Duckling broke another record today with a crazy buy. Did you see? Darren's grip on the phone tightened slightly. He kept his voice casual. Yeah. That guy must really be out of his mind, huh? I don't know. I think he's a genius, Sandy laughed. By the way, what's your account on Crypto Tracker? Let's follow each other. Mine's Sandy Beach. Darren hesitated. Shit. He didn't have an account and he hadn't yet claimed Fugly Duckling, it was still a placeholder account. Wouldn't Sandy find it suspicious if he told her he didn't have an account when he was the one that suggested the app to her? Thinking quickly, he said, let's play a game, Sandy. I'll send you a friend request, and you have to guess which amongst your requests is me. Sandy chuckled. You're very funny, Darren. Okay, I'll play your game. He exhaled. Crisis averted. Also, Sandy added, it's been almost a week since our usual get-together at Castle Cottage. Should we do one soon? Darren thought. Maybe next week. I'll let you know the date. Hey, I'm in. Kara called out. Sandy heard the feminine voice. Oh. Are you with someone? Darren clenched his jaw. Just a friend. I'll send you the request, okay. Then we'll talk more. Good night. Okay. Good night. He ended the call and walked to Kara. She spun her laptop toward him. Here are the numbers, she said, tapping the screen. You don't need to know all the hacking gibberish. Point is, I'm in. Access into Red Fang account is successful. The system informed him that she was right. Well done, Darren complimented her. But I do need one thing, Kara said. For me to actually do anything to the account, I need a connection to a computer that has account access inside one of their layers. Darren considered. I can do that. Since I'll be going there, I can get you the connection you need. Kara clapped her hands. Great. I'm not sure if I have a router here, but let me check. Don't worry about that, Darren said. She frowned. How are you gonna get me a connection without a router? Darren didn't answer. He just headed towards the stairs and began to climb it, hands in pockets. Mr. Duckling. Kara called. Mr. Duckling. He kept going. Kara sighed, shaking her head. That handsome son of a bitch. The city's wealthiest had a way of marking their presence. Not in words, but in machines. Outside Monarch Motors, the street gleamed with symbols of affluence. There were multiple beautiful cars showcased in front of the large building. Rolls-Royces idling under the sun, Ferraris humming as they slipped into traffic, Bentley owners waiting for valet service to return their keys. Even the sidewalk seemed to carry a scent of money-expensive cologne, leather seats, the faint, intoxicating smell of burnt rubber from cars too powerful for the roads they were confined to. Los Alvarez was a beautiful city of wealth, extravagance, and the celebrity lifestyle. The dealership itself was no different. It was a statement of its own. Glass and steel stretched high, the architecture sleek, modern for its time and deliberately designed to mirror the very products it sold. Inside, luxury cars sat on raised platforms under golden spotlights, polished to a mirror sheen. There was no loud music, no gaudy advertisements, only the soft hum of expensive conversations, whispered negotiations, and the quiet hiss of champagne being poured for VIP clients. Darren Steele stepped out of the private taxi he'd chauffeured, adjusting the cuff of his Tom Ford suit. The Red Fang loan repayment was in 2 days and he needed to not only arrive there in style but also in presence. Loan sharks were very used to being bullies and extortionists. If he presented himself as someone who couldn't be bullied to pay more than was initially agreed, then they would most likely back off. If they didn't, he had his plan with Kara. Once he was close enough to the front door of the company, the investor system declared with a ding that the inside protocol was ready. The interface appeared before him, inside protocol complete. Information on Monarch Motors is as follows: estimated value, $320 million. Primary business, luxury and exotic car sales, limited edition imports. Celebrity and high net worth clientele. Owner, formerly Victor Mathis, deceased 2 days ago. Current status, ownership is being contested by his children, Alexander and Juliet Mathis. Disputes over business direction may lead to instability in pricing and negotiations. Public reception, tactics, overprices rare models due to exclusivity, pressures buyers into unnecessary add-ons, prioritizes personal relationships with wealthy clients over standard buyers. Systems advice, use the dealership's internal instability as leverage in negotiations. Prices may be more flexible than usual. Be wary of hidden fees. Darren absorbed the information in silence. So the owner was dead. That explained the slightly uneasy energy in the showroom. With the children fighting for control, there could be a possibility that many of the cars present would want to be sold quickly in case a new management had a different approach. A perfect weakness. It was interesting how many companies and businesses were actually in a fragile state of ownership. What would be a more profitable property to purchase? A college or a car dealership? Darren left that thought for later when he would delve into more solid investments. He stepped inside and was instantly met with an auburn-haired, office-dressed woman. On the side of her chest was a tag that read Lana Marquesi. She was straightforward-looking, sharp-featured, and wearing an elegant black pencil dress. The look on her face exuded the polished confidence of someone who dealt with millionaires daily. Darren saw her sized him up in a single glance. Young. Too young. That was her thought. Despite the suit, the watch, the way he carried himself, there was no recognition in her eyes. He was an unknown. In Monarch Motors, they greatly prioritized established millionaires and billionaires. So not only did she not know who this young man was, but he seemed too young to be even serious about buying anything. She saw these types occasionally. Sons of businessmen, trust fund brats looking to impress. They walked in with big expectations, only to vanish the moment price negotiations began. But anyway, she wasn't paid to judge. So, she flashed a well-practiced smile. "Good afternoon, sir. Welcome to Monarch Motors. How may I assist you?" Darren only gave a solid short glance before replying, "I'm here to buy a car." Something flickered in her eyes, amusement, disbelief, maybe. "Of course," she said smoothly. "And what kind of car are you looking for today?" Darren reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded list. Without a word, he handed it to her. Lana hesitated before taking it from him, unfolding it carefully. Her eyebrows lifted. It was a list of cars that appeared to have been written with some careful thought. Lamborghini Aventador, Ferrari 458, Italia, McLaren MP4-12C, Aston Martin 1-77. For the first time, her professional mask cracked. She looked up at him, the faintest trace of skepticism in her expression. "You're interested in all of these?" Darren simply nodded. "That's why you have that note." Lana's smile turned syrupy, like someone indulging a child's fantasy. "That's quite the selection, Mr. Steele." "Mr. Steele," she repeated, as if tasting the name. "Forgive me, but these aren't exactly entry-level sports cars. If you're looking for something a bit more..." Darren cut her off. "I didn't come here for suggestions. I came to drive." He slipped one hand into his pocket, the other holding his briefcase. "I was told Monarch Motors had a good variety of beautiful cars, and they would certainly have everything in that list." "You do have them, right?" Lana nodded affirmatively. "Of course. We at Monarch Motors take great pride in our diversities." "Good. I'll test drive them," Darren demanded. She hesitated first, then looked up at his eyes. "Will you be paying in cash or by financing, sir?" Darren, noticing the bright green of her eyes, looked down at his unpocketed hand. "I brought a briefcase with me." There was a pause. Her gaze rested at the briefcase first, then she smiled, reassessing. She looked up at him once more. The suit, the watch, the absolute lack of hesitation in his tone. Still, she remained skeptical. "I'll need to verify some things first. High-performance vehicles require proof of financial standing before test drives. You understand?" Darren didn't blink. "Run it?" Lana exhaled, tapping the screen of her tablet. "One moment." As she worked, Darren's system continued to drop fun facts about Monarch Motors, including one that suggested that Mr. Victor Mathis before his death had been great friends with Dr. Leonard Holloway. Holloway had also been the one who had handled his surgeries and treatments before death. Lana returned a few minutes later with news that the cars were now ready for test drive. "Great," Darren nodded. "Let's start." They walked to the driveway garage, which was under the building. A dim, chamber-like vast room with white lights at every corner. The first car to test drive was the Lamborghini Aventador. Lana presented the Aventador to him. 6.5 LV12, 700 horsepower, 0 to 60 in 2.9 seconds. This car is loved by drivers who live for excitement. Darren didn't reply to that. He only placed the briefcase on the wall beside her and slid into the driver's seat. Dim dim. The soft music sang. The cabin was tight, cockpit-like. As he turned the ignition, the engine roared a raw, untamed beast. Out on the test track, Darren pushed the car hard. 0 to 60 miles per hour in 2.9 seconds. Each gear shift slammed like a hammer. He took the corners aggressively, feeling the weight of the AWD system, the brutal grip keeping it stable even at high speeds. Jesus, Lana muttered as she watched him drive and swirl around her. Not bad, he muttered, pulling back into the lot, but it lacked finesse. Too aggressive, he said once he stepped out. Lana was staring at him differently and only snapped out of it when he said, "Next." "Excuse me. Next is the Ferrari 458 Italia." She was more attentive now. "This one is different. Naturally aspirated, 562 horsepower, but it's about balance. If the Lombo is a hammer, this is a scalpel." Darren didn't reply once more. He just got in. He turned on the engine, and drove. Smoother. Lighter. The naturally aspirated V8 sang at 9,000 RPM, a more refined, exhilarating symphony. The balance was perfect, mid-engine layout giving it razor-sharp handling. Lana watched him drive, arms crossed over the file on her chest. Better, Darren admitted when he was done. But still not quite right. Eyebrows creased, Lana stared at him. "You've got to be kidding. Most people hesitate in that last corner," she commented. "You didn't. You're a very talented driver for your age." Darren didn't respond. "I've been driving for 13 years. Would be an idiot if I'm not better at it than others my age." The McLaren MP4-12C was next. Turbocharged. Lightning fast shifts. The dual-clutch transmission made every acceleration feel instantaneous. But something was missing: character. The McLaren was a clinical machine. Fast, efficient, but soulless. Darren exited before the track was finished. "Not this one." Lana smirked. "You don't waste time, do you? The last on the list is the Aston Martin 1-77. Don't worry. If you can't seem to decide on one from the list, I can suggest others for you." Lana hesitated before handing him the keys. "This is different. Handmade, only 77 in existence. If a Rolls-Royce and an F1 car had a child, this would be it." Darren stared at the 1-77. "Do you know what number it is?" She frowned. "What?" Darren shot her a look of his blue eyes. "Out of the 77 in existence, do you know what number this one is?" Taken off by the question, Lana shook her head. "No, I don't. I've NEV number 76, he said. Bought at an auction by Chance Delacroix but never drove it once." Lana stared at him. "The second to the last one ever made. It's sold more on reputation than on its properties. And the properties are already pretty impressive." Saying nothing more, Darren stepped forward and entered the vehicle, leaving the dealer in a loss for words. Once he got in, he hesitated to close the door. Then he turned to her. "Get in." She frowned. "Me? Well, yes." Lana blushed. "Ugh. I don't think that's appropriate. You wouldn't want to miss this. And besides, that's how other dealerships inspect test drives, isn't it?" Lana hesitated for a moment, before smiling. "Okay." She scurried on her heels around the car as Darren pulled open the door for her. Once she got in, they both closed the doors. Lana looked at him and smiled. Darren simply told her to put your seat belt on. She did, and he turned it on the car. The deep, controlled growl of the 7.3L V12 sent a shiver down Lana's spine. On the track, it was perfection. It had power: 750 horsepower, but it didn't shout. It commanded. Darren drove round and round on the track, completely in sync with the car. Every turn and every acceleration was seamless. It had the balance of the Ferrari, the prestige of the Lamborghini, and the sheer elegance of a bespoke Grand Tourer. "All right. I'm impressed," Lana commented once they got out of the vehicle. Darren stepped out. "This is the one." Lana gazed at him with a big uncontrollable smile on her face. She even bit her lip. "I'm happy you were able to find the one you like. Can we head on to contract agreements?" "Yes, please. Come with me." They headed on together to the contract office while a worker drove the car out into the front of the building for them. "The 1-77 is $1.5 million. We offer service packages, forget about add-ons." Lana narrowed her eyes. "That's unusual. Most buyers usually prefer add-ons." "Let's assume I'm not most buyers," Darren said, sitting straight on the chair. "Then there's no reason why I would want features or add-ons." A pause. "You sound like you've bought a car before," Lana said with a thoughtful tone. "I just know how these things work," Darren replied. Then, he leaned back. "Your owner just died. The dealership is in limbo. You don't want to hold onto a $1.5 million car while the business is unstable." Lana exhaled sharply. Darren gave her a calculative gaze. "Why don't we drop the price by $200K? Mr. Steele? The price cannot be reduced by that much." In the end, the price dropped by $200,000. As the negotiations were nearing an end, Darren glanced at the vehicle outside the window and said, "I'll need a mechanic to inspect it before we go any further." She hesitated, clearly not expecting this level of diligence from someone his age. "You really don't trust our quality? We only deal in the best." Darren's gaze was cold, unreadable. "I trust. I verify." With a tight-lipped smile, she waved a hand. "Fine, I'll get someone from the service department." A few minutes later, a grizzled mechanic in oil-streaked coveralls approached, wiping his hands on a rag. His name tag read Gus. "You the one buying the 1-77? Gus asked, sizing Darren up. "That depends on what you find," Darren replied. Gus let out a low whistle. "All right, let's get to work." For the next half hour, Darren stood by as Gus ran a full diagnostic. He checked the engine, the suspension, the tires, the brakes, and even the electrical systems. He listened to the purr of the V12, checked for any irregularities in the transmission, and even hooked up a scanner to check for hidden fault codes. Finally, Gus stood up and wiped his hands. "This machine's a beast. Whoever owned it before took damn good care of it. Barely even used it. No leaks, no hidden damage. It's just as good as new." Darren gave a small nod. "That's all I needed to hear." The salesperson folded her arms, watching him with more interest by the second. "You're really thorough, huh?" Not replying, Darren slipped his free hand into his pocket. The paperwork for the contract signing was a thick stack of agreements, covering everything from ownership transfer, dealership warranties, financing terms, which he rejected, and insurance options. Darren went through every page, making sure the system analyzed and approved of every. The salesperson watched, raising a brow. "You actually read the contracts?" Darren gave her a sidelong glance. "Only fools sign blind." She let out a short laugh. "I might have underestimated you, Mr. Steele." Once he was satisfied, he picked up the briefcase and handed it over. It was then given to a cashier who, after counting it, affirmed the amount of $1.3 million. Lana stared at Darren. This guy came here with the total certainty that he was going to cut down the price to exactly $1.3 million. That's an unbelievable amount of self-confidence. Darren signed the contract once again using his mother's name. He took the keys and as he stood to leave, Lana slid a small piece of paper into his hand. "In case you need anything else, Mr. Steele." Darren didn't glance at it but he knew it was a phone number. He simply tucked it into his pocket, walked out and got aboard on his brand new Aston Martin 1-77. Darren's Aston Martin 1-77 purred to a stop in the long, winding driveway of his mansion in Green Bay. The house stood in its usual quiet opulence that early afternoon. A large fountain in the front courtyard bubbled gently, the water shimmering under the golden glow of the sunlight. The gravel under his tires crunched softly, and as he cut the engine, silence reclaimed the day. Stepping out, he adjusted his suit jacket, running a hand through his neatly styled hair before making his way inside. The moment he opened the door and entered, his eyes landed on Kara, comfortably seated on the massive L-shaped couch in the living room, her fingers flying across the keyboard of her laptop. The screen's bluish glow illuminated her sharp, focused expression, her brows slightly furrowed in concentration. She sat there comfortably and at ease, legs lazily draped over the armrest, her posture utterly at home as if she'd been living here for years. She was dressed casually, a loose gray sweatshirt, slightly oversized, hanging off one shoulder, showing a large amount of cleavage beneath her tight sleeveless, and black shorts that barely peeked out beneath the hem. Her vivid red hair, always somewhat messy, was tied into a lazy bun, though strands still rebelliously fell around her face. Her bare feet tapped absent-mindedly against the couch as she typed. Darren tossed his keys onto the side table, the light clink breaking the silence. "Are you always on that stuff?" he asked dryly, slipping off his coat. Kara barely glanced up, pausing only to stretch her fingers before resuming her rapid typing. "Some of us have work to do, Mr. Duckling." "I see. Work." Cars suddenly stopped. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard as she thought of something. "Wait." She looked up, her keen eyes narrowing slightly. "What was that noise before you came in?" Darren hung his coat neatly on the dark wooden hanger by the entrance, saying nothing to her. Kara's frown deepened as she tilted her head. "Didn't sound like an ordinary taxi." Her sharp gaze locked onto him. "You didn't use a taxi today, huh?" Then she noticed the way he was acting, that look on his face. Her eyes widened. "No way." Darren looked at her for a moment but still said nothing, only stepping past her toward the water dispenser. He pressed the button on the machine, filling a glass with crisp, cool water. Kara stared at him, wondering if her speculation was right. "No effing way. I'm gonna take a look." She hurried to the door and flung it open. The moment she did, she gasped audibly at the side parked just beside the fountain. She saw the car. The Aston Martin 1-77. The sun was glowing on its sleek, sculpted frame. The car's low, aggressive stance, the way the curves flowed seamlessly into sharp aerodynamic edges. Gosh, it was nothing short of automotive perfection. Kara practically tripped over herself as she scurried outside, eyes wide, lips parted in sheer disbelief. "No fucking way." She spun around to face the house, speaking to Darren who was still inside, calmly sipping his water. "Mr. Duckling, are you insane?" she shrieked, flailing an arm toward the car. This is an Aston Martin 177. There are literally only 77 of these things in the entire world." She turned back to the car, her breath almost hitching in admiration. "What the fuck? How rich are you, really? Come on, tell me. Because. Fuck. This isn't just any car, this is like the automotive equivalent of Michelangelo sculpting David while high on divine inspiration." Kara ran her fingers along the pristine body, her face contorted in pure ecstasy. "Sweet mother of torque, look at this thing," she whispered, crouching down to admire the massive carbon ceramic brakes. "Even the damn rims look like they belong in an art museum." Darren sighed from inside. "Get back in here, Kara." No. I'm moving into the car now. This house? Useless. That couch? Trash. This car? My new home. Kara. She huffed, but eventually scurried back inside, grinning like an absolute idiot. You seem to be into cars, Darren said, looking at her once she got in. What can I say? I'm a lady. Ladies love cars. As she flopped onto the couch again, Darren pulled something from his jacket pocket, a thick stack of crisp bills. He held it out toward her. Go to the boutique tomorrow and buy yourself some nice clothes. A fancy dress as well. His tone was matter of fact, but firm. We're going out in 2 days. The Red Fang loan repayment. Kara stared at the cash. She didn't move for a moment. Just looked at it. Then, before Darren could react, she stepped forward and wrapped both arms around him in a hug. What was surprising was that this wasn't her usual playful, sarcastic hug. Not one of her usual over-the-top antics. Or a seduction tactic. It was a real, quiet hug. Darren froze for a second. He looked down at her, her face pressed lightly against his chest, her breathing steady, warm. Hey, are you okay? He asked. She just held onto him. Longer than expected. Her voice was muffled against his suit. Thank you, okay. She pulled back slightly, looking up at him. It's kind of funny, but you're the only person who's ever done something nice for me. For the first time, Darren really looked at her. He noticed how very crimson and beautiful her eyes were. Though not as crimson as her hair, framing her delicate features, and for a brief second, something flickered in his chest. But he pushed it down. He straightened his posture. It's fine. Shaking off whatever lingered, he cleared his throat. Hey. By the way, have you been here all day? Did you even eat? Kara shrugged. I ate some apples from the fridge. Gladys wouldn't cook anything. A pause. Nearby, the elderly housekeeper, who had been vacuuming the hall, suddenly stopped. She turned and looked at them. They were all silent. Kara looked at Gladys and then at Darren. What? Darren exhaled, rubbing his temple. Kara. Gladys is a housekeeper. Not a maid. She doesn't cook for me, or for you. Kara's eyes widened slightly. Oh. She immediately turned to Gladys. I'm really sorry for assuming that. The old woman simply gave a nod. It's fine. Darren gestured toward the cash still in Kara's hands. I'm sure you can get yourself something to eat with that too. Then, in a firmer voice, he said, be back quick. We need to go over the plan tonight and practice tomorrow. Kara nodded. Okay. Giving her one final look, Darren closed his eyes, then turned and walked down the hallway, disappearing into his room. Left alone, Kara turned toward Gladys. Checking if Darren was fully out of sight, she stuck out her tongue at the old woman. Gladys simply squinted, then made a face back at her. Kara grimaced. Then, just to be extra, she pulled down one eyelid and wiggled her fingers near her face. Gladys pointed a finger at her in mock warning. Kara retaliated by fanning the cash in her hands, flipping her red hair over her shoulder, and prancing away sassily. Gladys sighed. Lord help that girl. Since Los Alvarez was a city of parties and wealth, there were many options for him to choose from where many people were present. One of such options was the reopening of Golden Hay Casino. Darren pulled up to the grand entrance of the newly reopened casino club with his new car. Even though the Aston Martin outshined many in the parking lot, there were still multiple stunning vehicles for his eyes to feast on. Nevertheless, the more catching sight was the flurry of activity. Valets in crisp uniforms hurried to assist guests, while photographers snapped pictures of the affluent attendees. The casino, once owned by the late Albert Hayes, had been meticulously refurbished by his son, Grant Hayes, and today marked its grand reopening. It was a day party, but this was because this part of the celebration was open to everyone wealthy enough to be aware of it. Later that night, the exclusive party would begin where all important and invited guests were allowed in. When his door was opened, Darren stepped out first, adjusting his tailored suit, a deep navy ensemble that had been surprisingly selected by Kara, sophisticated and gallant. He extended a hand to her when her door was opened. Kara accepted it gracefully, albeit with a hint of reluctance. Her dress, a floor-length emerald gown, hugged her figure perfectly, contrasting beautifully with her fiery red hair. Despite her discomfort, she moved with as much elegance as she could, drawing appreciative glances from onlookers. Darren gave her sideways glance, noting how beautiful she looked in a dress. She caught him. "Were you looking at me?" she asked. "I wasn't." "Huh? You totally were," she chuckled. "I didn't know you had a thing for posh girls. But don't get too used to seeing me like this. I feel like a peacock in this getup." Darren hid his smile and they ascended the marble steps. Kara leaned in and whispered, "These heels are instruments of torture, Mr. Duckling." Darren kept a straight face. "Just try to be composed. We don't want to look like amateurs in this place." They entered the casino, a dazzling display of luxury and opulence. Crystal chandeliers hung from the high ceilings, casting a warm glow over the polished marble floors. There were elegant tables lined the expansive room, and on each of them were adornments with plush seating and attended by impeccably dressed dealers. In the air was an absolute presence of quiet, warm music, with the soft hum of conversation, punctuated by the occasional burst of laughter or the clinking of glasses. Darren's gaze sharpened as the investor system activated, providing him with a detailed analysis of the establishment. Inside protocol complete. Information on Golden Hay Casino Club is as follows: estimated net worth, $350 million. Primary income, high stakes gambling, luxury accommodations, exclusive events, fine dining. Owner, Grant Hayes, known for extravagant interiors, elite clientele, premier gaming experiences, top-tier security measures. Public reception. Before reopening, tactics: aggressive marketing to high-net-worth individuals, partnerships with luxury brands, hosting exclusive events to attract elite guests. Systems advice, potential for high-yield collaborations. Approach with strategic proposals to align with their luxury brand collaborations. Darren thought. System. You want me to get a casino club as an ally? Ally potential is favorable considering Grant Hayes is new to the business world. I see. I'll keep that in mind. Kara's eyes darted around, taking in the grandeur. This place is like a palace. I half expect to see royalty lounging around. Kara's voice dragged him from his thoughts. Kara, Darren murmured, you have to do something to make yourself seen. Involve in an activity. Mingle. We need to establish a solid alibi for what we're about to do. So people needed to see us. She nodded, her playful demeanor returning. Got it? Time to make some waves. Her gaze landed on a poker table surrounded by animated guests. I think I'll try my luck over there. Always did love a good gamble. Good. There are lots of people there. He looked down and saw her open palm, waiting for him to drop some money on it. Darren sighed, took out some cash from his pocket and handed her $2,000. Just don't lose my house, Darren quipped. Kara winked. No promises, Mr. Duckling. With that, she sauntered over to the poker table, immediately drawing attention with her vivacious energy. Darren watched her for a moment before chasing away the look in his eyes, and locking in with a more emotionless expression, then moving deeper into the casino. He accepted a glass of wine from a passing waiter, the rich aroma hinting at notes of blackberry and oak. As he sipped, his attention was drawn to a group of men seated around a circular table, engaged in a game that piqued his interest. Taking a closer look, Darren recognized the game. It was Corporate Conquest, a board and card game that involved players making strategic decisions for a hypothetical company, betting on moves that would either elevate or diminish its success in the city's financial market. Each round, the player whose strategies led to the highest profit margins would claim the pot. Darren got closer, watching them as they played. He started to circle the table, sipping his wine and observing the dynamics. Then, a ding came and the investor system supplied information through purple interfaces that appeared beside each of the men. The first was Charles Nelson, a share owner of Nelson Worldwide, a chain of hotels, banks, and minor groups renowned for its luxury accommodations and impeccable service. The next was Jackson Daniels, a master in import and export, representing D&D Exports, a company with vast international reach. The one with very long hair was Gillian Henderson, proprietor of multiple party clubs and casinos, a prominent figure in the city's nightlife scene. Then the last, a blonde, young-looking man, Grant Hayes, the host for the evening, having inherited the Golden Hay Empire from his late father, Albert Hayes. Darren continued to watch as the game continued, listening to the men discuss and laugh until the current round concluded with Jackson Daniels claiming victory. "Give me all that pot," he chuckled, claiming his prize. Darren seized the moment and stepped forward. "Mind if I join you, gentlemen?" he inquired, his tone polite yet confident. Everyone lifted their gaze to the handsome, blue-eyed man in suit before them. Gillian Henderson chuckled, his eyes gleaming with amusement. "You think you can keep up with the big boys?" Darren met his gaze steadily. "I'm just curious," he said, keeping his tone casual but assured. The men exchanged glances, weighing the proposal. They had no idea who this man was. Why should they just let him in? "You know what?" Gillian spoke. "As long as he has the money to gamble, let's see what he can do." Grant Hayes arched an eyebrow. "Are you sure, Gillian?" he asked. Gillian leaned back in his chair, a smirk playing on his lips. "Yeah, I'm sure, Grant. Let the new kid play. There's even a spare seat." Darren pulled out the chair smoothly and took a seat. "Thank you," he said, placing his wine glass down beside him. He could feel Jackson Daniels staring at him intensely with narrowed eyes, as though he was trying to place his face. Darren thought. "He doesn't recognize me, does he?" The polished mahogany table gleamed under the golden light of the casino's chandeliers. The centerpiece of the table was a miniature, silver-plated skyscraper. It was the company they would be managing throughout the game. Around it sat the players, one of the wealthiest of the wealthies in Los Alvarez, their faces reflecting varying degrees of confidence, skepticism, and amusement. Darren adjusted his cufflinks, keeping an unreadable expression as he withdrew a neat stack of crisp bills through the attending waiter. With a subtle flick, he slid the money forward onto the table, joining the buy-in. Across from him, Jackson Daniels stared at him while shuffling his own stack of bills, flipping through them with a casual air. "All right, gentlemen," Gillian Henderson said, leaning back in his chair. "You all know the rules, but since we've got a fresh face here, let's run through it again. The rules of the game: each player received 10 identical decision cards, each listing key business strategies: market expansion, cost cutting, mergers and acquisitions, debt financing, asset liquidation, employee layoffs, branding and advertising, stock buyback, venture capital investment, and R&D innovation. Every round, players would pick a card in secret and place it face down. Once everyone locked in their choice, all cards would be revealed at the same time. The combined choices of the players determined how the company fared that round, whether its stock value rose or plummeted. At the end of each round, a gamble took place. The players would bet on the projected valuation of the company at that stage. The one whose prediction was closest to the system-generated result won the bets of the others. At the end of 10 rounds, whoever accumulated the most wealth, being cash and shares, was the victor. Gillian Henderson leaned forward, cracking his knuckles. "All right, kid. Let's see if you can keep up." Jackson decided to speak out. "Don't I know you from somewhere?" he asked Darren. Darren looked at him and replied, "I don't know you from anywhere." Jackson smirked. "All right. This is going to be fun." Grant looked at them both. The game begun. The dealer rang the brass bell, signaling the first round. Darren studied the cards in his hands. The others were watching him carefully, though they tried to appear disinterested. He let his fingers brush over the options. What would they choose first? Market expansion was a safe opening move. It indicated confidence, the desire to push growth immediately. A predictable first play. He flipped the card onto the table, face down. The others did the same. "Reveal," the dealer said. The cards turned over simultaneously. 3 market expansions. 1 branding and advertising. 1 R&D innovation. The result flashed on the screen embedded in the table: stock valuation, plus 4% increase. Jackson chuckled. All right, playing it safe, huh? The gamble phase began. The players wagered on the new company valuation, estimating the upcoming trends. Darren underbet, purposefully letting the round slip by. He observed how the others placed their bets. For example, Jackson was aggressive. Charles was quiet and methodical. Jillian overestimated the company's early growth. In the end, Jackson won the round's gamble. He grinned as the dealer pushed a stack of bills toward him. "Hey, new guy, you hesitated there. You nervous?" Darren remained silent, his eyes already scanning the board for the next move. In round 2, Charles took home the victory, and the next round began. The table grew more competitive now. Jackson remained aggressive, riding his early winnings. Charles played it safer since that was working for him. Jillian's cocky attitude began showing in his reckless bets as he started to get frustrated after no wins. Darren lost another small sum, keeping his bets and choices balanced, ensuring he wasn't standing out yet. Then, in round 4, he made his first strike. The choices flipped over. Darren played debt financing. Only Charles had done the same. The others had gone for market expansion again. Grant, who wanted to go for debt financing, had changed his mind because of Jillian. The table's valuation flashed. Stock valuation, minus 8% decline. What? Jillian snapped. Darren sipped his wine, his voice calm. "I think you lack simple risk assessment. Don't you see, if you expand too much without securing finances, the company's liquidity gets strangled? You should have refinanced debt first." Charles looked at Darren and let out a low chuckle. "Not bad, kid." Jillian appeared insulted. He glared at Charles. "What?" "I was thinking the same thing," Charles shrugged. Jackson raised an eyebrow, intrigued. The gambling phase began. Darren placed a calculated bet, and this time, he won. Jillian cursed under his breath. Beginner's luck. Darren said nothing. From round 6 to 8, the game intensified. Men were the same. Always. No matter the age. Men in the same fields always came together to compete amongst themselves whilst having fun. That was what's going on here. But there's the gamble part, because everyone loves when money is on the line. For Jillian, he let his pride make him overplay his hands. Jackson tried to adapt but found himself constantly a step behind. Grant Hayes couldn't make up his mind on anything. Clearly he didn't know much about managing a giant business. Which led Darren to wonder how he would manage the enormous Golden Hay empire. He understood more and more why the system wanted him to get him as an ally. Meanwhile, in the game, Darren began dominating. He predicted every move perfectly, playing R&D innovation at the exact moment others shifted to cost-cutting, forcing them into reactive plays. He placed an asset liquidation card at the perfect moment, devaluing the company for one round before playing stock buyback the next, restoring the valuation while securing control. Each round, his wealth increased. By round 9, the others looked frustrated. And at round 10, he struck the final move. By now, Darren had amassed the most wealth at the table. The others were trying to salvage their losses. For the final round, he played venture capital investment while they attempted desperate branding and advertising plays to keep the company afloat. The valuation flashed, stock valuation, plus 15% increase. Silence. The dealer distributed the final winnings. Hold on. What the hell just happened? How? Jillian realized that he had no money in front of him, he'd lost everything. And so had Jackson, Charles and Grant. He outplayed us completely, Charles said. Gotta hand it to him. Kid must be a genius in business. Jillian clenched his jaw. He couldn't even accuse Darren of cheating, as that wasn't possible in a game like this where only knowledge was tested. He realized all of it now. Darren's initial losses had been bait. Every play had been methodical. Every loss, a calculated investment in appearing weaker before striking. The final total appeared on the screen. Winner, guessed $1.6 million in cash and shares. Jackson exhaled through his nose. Damn. Jillian scowled. You've got to be kidding me. Hey. Tell us your name. Grant, who had been staring at Darren in awe, leaned in as well. I am also curious. Please, who are you? He asked. Darren would have loved to answer Grant separately, but he checked his watch and saw he didn't have time. It was nice playing with you gentlemen. I hope we'll do this again. He gestured to the waiter, who placed a briefcase on the table and neatly packed the bills inside. With an effortless motion, Darren stood, closed the case, and turned. He walked past Charles, brushing him and tapping him on the shoulder as though apologizing. Grant hesitated, then pushed back his chair to follow. Meanwhile, across the room, thank you all for playing. Now if I'll just Kara, grinning like a fox, swept the pile of casino chips from the table into her bag. The players around her looked devastated. Darren reached her just as she was stuffing the last chips in. We're leaving. Kara blinked. Wait, let me know. Now. She clutched the bag to her chest like it was her firstborn child. Fine, but damn, I'm rich. Thank you all. I so love taking other people's money. As they exited, Grant tried to catch up, but by the time he reached the doors, they had entered the car and disappeared into the streets. He turned to the guards. Do you know what that guy was? Is he coming to the exclusive party tonight? The guards exchanged glances. No, sir. We don't have him on the guest list. Grant frowned. Who was that man? Darren drove through the city streets, his gaze locked in determination and focus. The tires rolled over the wet pavement, a faint slickness from the very early morning drizzle making the roads shine under the sun. Kara, in the passenger seat, had her feet propped up on the dashboard, lazily twirling one of her chips between her fingers. Darren looked at her. Kara, set up your laptop and the access to the Red Fang bank accounts. She exhaled a quiet sigh before sitting upright. All right, Mr. Duckling. Setting up the laptop now, she said, flipping open her sleek device and tapping away. Darren, eyes on the road, barely reacted. Good. Do you think they would have noticed your presence by now and locked you off it? She scoffed. The only person who's ever done that is you, and I still have some questions as to how you did it, dear Mr. Duckling. Not that I'm gonna answer any. Darren cut a corner. Kara smirked, arriving at the interface in her computer. By the way, I never told you this before, but there's a whole lot of money in here. Darren didn't miss a beat. I know, he said simply. That's why the Red Fang wouldn't want to lose it. Kara gave an exaggerated whistle. Damn. You really don't flinch, do you? If I had that much money in my sights, I'd be sweating bullets right now. I don't believe that. Kara chuckled, shaking her head as she continued typing. The Aston Martin finally slowed as Darren turned into a darker, quieter part of the city. He eased into a narrow alley just off Crane Street, parking between two abandoned buildings with boarded-up windows. This place was somehow darker because of the abandoned high buildings, only the faint glow of a nearby street lamp was the main source of light apart from the poor sunlight seeping through roofs. Darren unbuckled his seat belt, reached into the glove compartment and pulled out a pair of black gloves, slipping them on without a word. Kara watched him with growing suspicion. Okay, what's with the gloves? This is starting to feel real criminally all of a sudden. Darren ignored her as he opened a compartment under the dashboard, retrieving a sleek, black Glock. Kara's eyes went wide. Whoa. 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 What the hell, Mr. Duckling? Darren calmly slid the gun into his coat pocket. What are you planning to do? She asked, voice half wary, half curious. No one is getting killed here, right? Right. I'm not using the gun for anything, Darren said evenly. It's just part of the plan. Huh? That's what they all say before things go sideways. Kara leaned back, folding her arms. Just tell me I'm not going to die today. And that I'm still getting my 20 grand. You're not going to die today, Kara. And you're still getting your 20 grand. She sat up and smiled. You actually said it? Sighing, Darren opened the door. Once I activate the router and you get full access to the account to tamper as you please, that's the sign that you should begin. All right, all right. Just, be careful, yeah. Darren didn't respond. He stepped out, briefcase in hand, and walked down the dark, ominous alleyway. Arriving at the heavy metal door, he knocked once and saw the familiar, beady eyes peering through the gap. Password, the security man grunted. Then, his face changed. Recognition dawned. Huh. You again. Darren said nothing. The guard let out a low grunt before pushing the door open. His gaze dropped to the briefcase in Darren's hand. Right on date, huh? You here to pay? Darren nodded. I am. The man mumbled. He took the case from Darren to inspect, flipping it open to reveal neatly stacked bundles of cash. His brows lifted in mild approval. But before stepping aside, the guard ran his hands over Darren's torso, patting him down and then searched him extensively. His fingers halted when they reached the gun in Darren's coat. He pulled it out, gripping it tightly. Darren's eyes took note of the way his fingers curled around the handle. Seemingly satisfied, he looked away. The guard clicked his tongue. You won't be needing this. Darren didn't resist as the man took the Glock. Satisfied, the guard nodded toward the hallway. Come on in. Darren followed him inside, past the murky, smoke-filled club where the air was thick with cheap perfume, alcohol, and the unmistakable scent of illegal deals. The scantily clad women sauntered between groups of wealthy men, their laughter sharp and artificial. The bass-heavy music pounded in the background, a steady, unrelenting thrum. Darren barely spared it a glance. He had only one destination. The office. Inside, seated behind a desk cluttered with whiskey glasses and cigar ash, was the man he had met before. Broad-shouldered, middle-aged, a skull tattoo on his face, and dressed in a dark burgundy rugged suit. He grinned upon seeing Darren, showing his golden teeth. Ah, welcome back, office boy. His voice dripped with amusement. Then he took a good look at him. Hell, what happened to you? You lookin' kinda different. Almost didn't recognize you. Same here, boss, the security guard added, smirking. Must have started talking those online red pill routines. The two men chuckled. Darren remained expressionless. The boss leaned forward, scrutinizing him. "So I hear you got my money." Darren set the briefcase down. "It's all in there." The boss didn't open it immediately. Instead, he studied Darren a moment longer, eyes filled with something between curiosity and suspicion. "You telling me," he said slowly, "that you managed to pay off $270,000 in 1 month? That's the first time that's happened, you know. Especially for a kid." Darren didn't respond. The boss smirked, gesturing toward his men. "Take it inside and count." Darren finally spoke, his voice cool and collected. "They can count it here." The room tensed, everyone paused. The boss's expression darkened. "What'd you just say, boy?" Darren didn't flinch when he met his gaze. "I said they can count it here." "Why not?" "Here's fine." The boss leaned back, exhaling sharply through his nose. Then, his lips curled in amusement. "Oh. So you think you're tough now, huh?" He gestured at Darren's outfit. "Come in here with a fine suit, a fine watch, even saw that fine-ass Aston Martin parked outside. Big car for a small kid." His smirk faded. "Now, I don't know what kind of business you got going on, but I sure am curious. Ain't nobody gets this fresh in 1 month without doing something illegal." He snapped his fingers. "Go ahead and count the money, boys. Tell me how much." Darren watched them go inside. He didn't move. Minutes later, they returned. The lead henchman looked uneasy. "It's only $80,000, he said. The boss's brow twitched. "Only 80K. He let out a short laugh, then turned back to Darren. "Where's the rest of it, office boy? 80K is only the interest. Where's the 200K? Darren didn't react. Obviously, he'd expected this. "The money is all there. Everything. The 280K. Silence. The boss narrowed his eyes. "So you're calling my boys liars?" His voice was dangerously low. He then raised it. "No. You're calling me a liar." Then, in an instant, he pulled out a gun and leveled it at Darren. A series of clicks followed, every henchman in the room aimed their weapons at him. Darren slowly raised his hands. The boss sneered. "Get me the rest of my money, office boy." Darren let out a sigh. "I knew it would come to this." The silence in the room stretched, thick with tension, as Darren stared down the man across the desk. The boss's face twisted in fury, his fingers curling tighter around the pistol aimed at Darren's chest. "What the hell are you talking about?" the boss snarled, spittle flying as he bared his teeth. Darren's lips curled in disdain. He leaned slightly forward, gaze unwavering. "Desperate people are easy targets." "That's what you said, isn't it?" The room stilled. The men standing at the edges shifted uncomfortably, their fingers twitching over their weapons. "People just trying to escape their debts. Save their homes. Feed their families," Darren continued. "Of course, some of them brought it on themselves. Some made bad, selfish choices that led to their predicament. But that doesn't give you the right to exploit them so heartlessly." "Shut your mouth," one of the henchmen yelled. The boss stepped closer, his voice sharp, his stance aggressive. "Hand over the rest of the money." Darren didn't appear moved at all. "Look at you. You know you have the money, but you still can't let me go. You can't stand the idea that I slipped out of your grip, that I didn't end up broken like you expected." He exhaled sharply, shaking his head. "I know what you were planning. The moment I took that loan, you didn't see me as a debtor, you saw me as product. Fresh, young, healthy." Darren's gaze darkened. "In fact, I'm sure you looked at me, admiring my liver, my kidneys, my heart. All perfectly intact. Would fetch you a fortune in the black market. The boss's eye twitched. One of the men swore under his breath. "This moron's still talking," another henchman spat, pulling back the hammer of his gun. "I'm gonna give you one more chance. Pay what you owe before I unload bullets into you," the boss warned. Darren's mouth quirked. "Would you really?" he mused. "You'd want to keep the organs intact, right?" His voice dropped, goading. "Are you that good of a shot to hurt me without hitting a very important, expensive organ?" The room tensed. The air thickened with unspoken unease. The boss's nostrils flared as his grip tightened around the pistol, but he didn't pull the trigger. Darren let the silence stretch before speaking again. "Even if I was to give you the rest of the money, you're never going to let me go. You'd want more. I mean, a rich kid under your thumb would be awesome for business." His eyes gleamed coldly. "Which is why I can't just simply let this go by paying you what you are asking for." The boss's eyes flickered dangerously. He nodded slightly, and in an instant, one of his men stepped forward and drove a fist into Darren's jaw. Pain exploded across his face as his head snapped sideways. Darren grunted but slowly turned his face back forward, licking his split lip. Even though it hurt, his voice remained indifferent. "I'll let that slide as a warning," he muttered. Then in his mind, he commanded the system, "Act as a router and activate connection with the laptop near the couch." A low hum filled his ears. The system obeyed. "Establishing network link. Connection secured. Router mode active in the car outside." Kara's eyes widened as her screen flickered. "He actually did it," she muttered. She tapped a few keys, and suddenly, a new screen opened. A live transaction feed. Her brows shot up as she saw the Red Fang's total balance, $59.2 million, completely accessible to her to use as she wished. Kara cracked her fingers. "All right, let's start siphoning." She set the withdrawal speed to 5% per interval and hit enter. Back in the office, Darren wiped the blood from his mouth with the back of his hand. "But I won't let it slide next time," he said. The boss's expression twisted into a sneer. He pulled the slide back on his gun, the distinct click-clack filling the room. Darren narrowed his eyes. "Not even the least bit curious, huh? Well, I'll tell you anyway. But first, take a look at your laptop." One of the henchmen hesitated before stepping forward. He tapped a key, and his face instantly drained of color. Boss." The others moved closer, and as they looked, panic flickered across their features. "What? What is it?" the boss snapped. "The account. Boss, it's being drained. Right now. Money's disappearing by the second. It's encrypted, we can't stop it." The boss's face contorted in shock. His head snapped toward Darren, who remained utterly calm, no expression on his face. "What the hell are you doing?" Darren tilted his head. "Me? I'm not doing anything. Your entire profit is drained by an unstoppable and encrypted outside interference." "What? What did you bring in here?" he demanded. He turned to the security guard. "You searched him, didn't you?" "I did. He had nothing." The boss turned back to Darren, his hands shaking with rage. "Are you with the cops?" Darren exhaled sharply. "That's a dumb question. Cops wouldn't steal money from criminals." His voice dropped to a murmur. "I'm taking it, for myself." A hushed silence fell. Darren leaned back, unfazed. "You see, I am the router. The longer I stand here, the more money gets siphoned out. You can kill me if you want, but that won't stop it." One of the henchmen stammered, staring at the screen. "Boss, it's already down 5%. The boss stiffened. "That's $3 million gone," Darren said coolly. He sighed, shaking his head. "Shanks won't be happy about that." The boss's fingers twitched. His mouth opened, then closed. Darren studied him. Oh yeah. I know you're not the top dog. Rodriguez Tavares. And last I checked, he's still in Spain, hiding because the cops are sniffing around his operations. What do you think he's gonna say when he finds out all his sustenance money is gone? The boss's expression twisted with fury. Sir. 85% left, the henchman called out again. The boss swore under his breath. His finger hovered over the trigger. Then furious, humiliated, he turned the gun toward Darren's leg. Darren's voice remained even. If I get wounded, the withdrawal rate jumps to 50%. He tilted his head. Actually, it's probably already increased to 10% by now. The henchman paled. Sir, 70% remaining. The boss clenched his teeth. His whole body trembled with frustration. Get him out of here, he barked. Now. Darren stayed still. My gun and ID card. The boss's jaw ticked. But he nodded, and his men reluctantly returned the items. Darren smoothly adjusted his coat, taking one last look at the boss before he was escorted out, ignoring the stares from the club's patrons. They hurriedly led him out of the premises and into the alley. Even though his heart was pounding, Darren's face remained unreadable. The moment he was free, and the door was closed. Bam! Darren exploded into his heels, running to his car. Unlocking it, he threw himself inside. Kara turned, eyes wild. What is it? What the hell is happening? Cancel the connection, Darren ordered. Do it now. Don't hurry me. She frantically shut it down. Someone's coming, she shrieked. Through the mirror, Darren spotted a henchman sprinting toward them. Without hesitation, he gunned the engine, tires screeching as the Aston Martin peeled out. Kara screamed, gripping the dashboard. You are insane. Tell me the truth, are you a spy? A spy? I'm asking, is there some James Bond going on in this shit? Kara yelled out loud as bullets shot out of the henchman's gun. Darren didn't respond. He drove faster, hitting a switch that made his car's plates to be covered by a black cloth. Behind them, the henchman stopped, panting hard. Darren drove through the city as calmly as he could, not letting the adrenaline from the situation fuel his drive. Once he got close to a street, without hesitation, he pulled out the Glock from his coat pocket and tossed it into a waste bin on the street corner. Kara frowned. Why the hell did you just do that? Because that gun was just used in a bank robbery, Darren said, his voice calm, eyes still on the road. Kara made a face. What the hell are you talking about? Darren didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached into the glove compartment, pulling out a cheap burner phone. Flipping it open, he dialed. Hello, 911? I'm calling in regards to the robbery in Nelson Bank that just happened an hour ago. Yes, I think I just saw two robbers in ski masks matching the description of what was said on the news. He spoke with just the right amount of urgency to sound believable. One of them dumped his gun into the waste bin on the corner street before the main road after leaving Crane Street. Yes. I didn't see much. That's all I have to say. He ended the call, shut the phone, removed the battery, and flung it into the compartment. Kara stared at him in disbelief. Did you just make all that up? Yes. She continued staring at him as they rode away. Just as they reached the main road, police sirens filled the air. Multiple cop cars rushed past them, heading in the direction they had just come from. Darren took a deep breath. So far, his plan was working perfectly as schemed. Over the night, when he had brought Kara into the house in Green Baby, he had thought deeply about it. During his old life, he knew that loan sharks were one of the worst people on the planet. They couldn't be trusted. The Red Fang wasn't any different, so he needed to be prepared. He needed a way to ensure he left that place without being harmed, exploited, or forced to be incriminated as an ally to their evil acts. So, he came up with the idea. He knew that people who did evil things for money cherished nothing more than that money itself. That was his leverage, something to exchange his freedom for. But to get them out of his life permanently? That was the real challenge. They were relentless. Unforgiving. They wouldn't stop hunting him as long as they knew he had money and had crossed them. Since he couldn't go full John Wick and murder all of them, he had to find a way to get them all arrested. And with the Red Fang being high on the FBI's most wanted list because of their activities, he knew that once they were caught, they were never coming back. But how was he going to do it? These people were extremely careful. They operated in the shadows. The idea that came to mind was to attach them to a crime that was going to occur. That way, they'd be brought into the police's eyes once again. But the investor system didn't give Darren information on crimes to occur soon. It wasn't a superhero system. So, he had to tweak it. He first told his system to search for companies that would suffer losses due to criminal activities in the coming days. He found out that Nelson Bank would suffer a serious robbery in just a few days. Who was the CEO of Nelson Bank? Charles Nelson. Son of Charleston Nelson. The same Charles he'd just played against at the casino opening party. Darren chose there as an alibi to kill two birds with one stone. He had placed a bullet casing on Charles Nelson, who would get shot in the leg that day. Darren stuck it on Nelson's heavy coat, which could hold things because of the material. The same gun that had the bullet with that casing was the one Darren took with him, knowing the security would search him, find the gun, and smear his fingerprints all over it. Which was why Darren had worn gloves. He was safe. After retrieving the gun when he was leaving, he tossed it into the bin and told the cops it was there. Now, it was all up to law enforcement. Ring, ring. In the waste bin, multiple cop cars gathered around. The officers found the gun. Hey! Over here. A cop retrieved it from the waste bin, carefully placing it in an evidence bag. Bag it and send it in for prints. At the station, inside the forensics lab, a group of detectives hovered over a monitor, waiting for results. One of them leaned in as the system beeped. Once the results came, it was sent to the cops. His name is Tyrese O'Dunce. Keep an eye out for Tyrese O'Dunce. Also known as Steelhead. A known member of the Red Fang Association. Extremely tall, muscular, black, and has a scar across his nose. An agent sucked in a sharp breath. He's on the FBI's most wanted list. Search the entire area, the lead detective barked. If this is what I think it is, we're taking down a big fish today, boys. Of course, the real thieves would be caught soon, and Steelhead wouldn't be charged for that particular robbery. But that didn't matter. The Red Fang were getting charged for something much worse. They all would be going down forever, for all their crimes against humanity. For doing pure evil things in the search of money. For taking advantage of people like him. People who were just searching for help. Darren clenched his fists. He understood that hustling was necessary. But no amount of money was worth the life of another human being. They arrived home in Green Bay, and as Darren stepped inside, the television was already on. Brooklyn Baker's voice echoed through the room. Ladies and gentlemen, breaking news tonight, after years of terrorizing the city, the notorious Red Fang Association has finally been taken down. An anonymous tip led the CPD straight to Steelhead, real name Tyrese O'Dunce, who was linked to the Nelson Bank robbery after forensic evidence tied him to a discarded firearm at the crime scene. With new financial and criminal evidence surfacing, the entire Red Fang network is being dismantled as we speak. Their illegal operations, scams, and underground dealings have plagued the state for years. But tonight, thanks to an unknown informant, California can finally breathe a little easier. Darren removed his coat. Kara was still staring at the screen, dumbfounded. Then, she slowly turned to him. "You." She started, her voice breathless. She blinked. "You are so hot." Darren barely had time to react before she stood up, walked toward him, and, without warning, grabbed him by the collar. Then, she crashed her lips onto his. Darren pulled away from the kiss, looking down at Kara with eyes that had confusion and shock. Her eyes were soft and fragile as she looked up at him, her lips slightly parted. Darren saw the redness form on her dainty cheeks and heard the hint of uncertainty and timidness flickering in her gaze. Ding. The system sang, "This character is deeply attracted to you." Ding. It went again. "This character feels a romantic connection with you." Darren just stared. "Are you going to push me away?" she asked gently, her voice barely above a whisper. Darren's heart pounded in his chest. So far, he'd only seen Kara as a flirtatious young woman who had a wild life that he would prefer being distant from. He had started enjoying her company and her quirky jokes, and would even find himself noticing how attractive she was at times. Yet, he never saw her as a potential partner. And even if they'd joke about it, he never believed he would sleep with her either. In fact, after this, he planned to simply pay her her money and send her back with a warning of what he could do to her if she told anyone his secrets. But now, with that single kiss from her, that daring move, everything just turned upside down. Everything felt completely different. As they stood face to face, lips and tongues smeared by each other's saliva, he could feel the heat radiating from her body, the softness of her breath against his face. He reached down, gently cupping her cheek, his thumb brushing against her soft skin. "No," he murmured, his voice low and husky. "You can stay." He leaned in, capturing her lips in a deeper, and more passionate kiss. Kara melted into him, her body pressing against his, her hands tangling in his hair. Darren's hands couldn't allow hers to have all the fun. They explored her body, tracing the curves of her hips, the small of her back, the swell of her breasts. She pushed her body closer to him more and more. It was passionate and completely disarranged. They just did as their bodies let them. As the kiss intensified, Kara gasped into his mouth, caused by the sudden manner in which he cupped her breasts, his thumbs brushing against her hardening nipples. She moaned through the kisses, feeling his fingers playing and slightly pinching her nipples through her dress. Pitying her poor control over the weak spot, Darren decided to break the kiss. However, lips went on a separate journey. They trailed down her neck romantically, nibbling on the sensitive skin, and planting soft kisses and random intervals. Unable to contain the pleasure, Kara tilted her head back, moaning softly. Mr. D, she breathed, her voice filled with desire. "I want you." Darren looked down at her, his eyes dark with hunger. He stopped touching her, stopped kissing, stopped caressing. Then, as she looked up at him, he touched the side of her face in such a dominant manner that Kara felt herself melt on his palm. Her eyebrows slanted in a vulnerable manner. Darren couldn't even believe that this was the same witty, sharp-mouthed Kara. He took her hand, leading her to the couch. He sat down, pulling her onto his lap. Kara straddled him, her hands on his chest, her breath heavy and arriving in sexy gasps. Darren traced his fingers down her shoulders and to her back, then skillfully unzipped her gown without even looking. As he did this, she moaned slightly at the faint touch of his fingers brushing against her soft skin. He lowered the expensive fabric down her shoulders, revealing her lace bra. Kara's face even reddened the more, seeing how fixed his gaze was at her glistening cleavage. Like a lion, Darren leaned in to feast. Even though her breasts were still imprisoned inside her bra, he captured one nipple in his mouth through the fabric, teasing it with his tongue. Kara arched her back as the soft moan escaped her lips. Annoyed with its presence, Darren unhooked her bra, letting it fall to the side. He took her breast in his hand, his thumb circling her nipple. Kara's breath hitched, her eyes filled with desire, her lips squeezed as she tried to hold back squirms and squeaks. But Darren, as unforgiven as he was, leaned in, capturing her nipple into his mouth and locking his lips around them. Ugh, she moaned. That's so mean. Kara's hands were in his hair, her body pressing against his. Darren let go of her nipples and looked at her, smiling proudly. I didn't know your nipples were that sensitive. She gave up, looking at him like she was telling him to do as he pleased with them. And so he did. Darren kept sucking and sucking. Every time his mouth was sucking on a nipple, his palm had grasped the other breast, fondling with that nipple. And every time he switched places, Kara would moan and squirm beyond her own control. Spasms of pleasure burst from her areolas and reverberated through her fragile, slender body. Then, taking her by surprise, Darren stood up, lifting Kara with him. He carried her to the bigger couch, laying her down on her back. He took a moment to look at her, his eyes tracing the curves of her body. Kara looked up at him, her eyes filled with anticipation. She let the gown fall completely off her body, and when it hung on the tip of her toe, she gave it a swing, flinging it at the nearby couch. Making sure she maintained eye contact with him, Kara sat up straight, knowing what came next. Darren began unbuttoning his pants, pushing them down along with his boxers. Suddenly, his cock sprang free, hard and ready. Kara shifted her head backwards as it had almost hit her jaw, then her eyes widened once she took a good look at it, a soft moan escaping her lips. He, she laughed in an unusually nervous manner that was unlike her. I was not expecting that. But then Darren did something she didn't expect. Instead of asking her to open her mouth, or maybe even putting it in himself, he suddenly placed his hand on her shoulders and pushed her to the couch. Ugh, she moaned. Darren quickly knelt before her, his hand sliding up her thighs. He pushed her legs apart, his eyes locked on her wet pussy. Kara's breath hitched as she felt his tongue flick over her clit, sending a jolt of pleasure through her body. Darren's tongue moved expertly over her, his fingers joining in the teasing. Kara's moans filled the room, her body writhing under his touch. Darren's tongue moved lower, teasing her entrance. Kara's moans grew louder, her body begging for more. Darren's tongue pushed inside her, filling her in a way that made her ache for more. Kara's hands tangled in his hair, her hips moving in time with his tongue. Darren's tongue left her, and Kara whimpered at the loss. But Darren wasn't done with her yet. He stood, his cock hard and ready. Kara's eyes widened as she took in his size, her pussy clenching in anticipation. You're not gonna let me catch my breath, she whispered. Darren smirked. Even when her pussy was leaking and her body was vibrating, Kara DeAndre still had time for jokes. He pushed her down onto the couch, his body completely covering hers. Kara's breath trapped as she felt his cock tease her entrance. Then with a bam, Darren's hips moved, his cock sliding inside her. Kara's body stretched to accommodate him, a gasp escaping her lips. His thrusts were slow and deep, his cock filling her in a way that made her ache for more. Kara's moans grew louder, her body moving in time with his. Darren's thrusts grew harder, his hips pounding into hers. Her moans grew louder, her body trembling under his. His fingers found her clit, teasing her sensitive flesh. Kara's body tensed, her orgasm building inside her. I think. Okay. Oh my. NGH. She yanked backwards. I think I'm going to come. Stay in place, Kara, Darren demanded. I'm going to come too. With a final thrust, Darren's body tensed, his cock pulsing inside her. But then he quickly pulled away as his cum poured all over body. Kara's orgasm washed over her, her body trembling under the drops of man milk. Her body was spent, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Slowly, Darren lowered his body and his lips found hers in a slow, lingering kiss. Kara's heart raced, her body still trembling from the intensity of their encounter. Darren's lips left hers, his eyes meeting hers. "That was amazing," she whispered to him, her voice filled with desire. Darren's heart swelled with pride, his body still humming with pleasure. He stood, pulling Kara up with him. Kara's eyes widened as she saw the dining table, and saw that he was heading for it. Darren's eyes darkened with desire, a wicked grin spreading across his face. "Ready for round 2? You're quite greedy, you know." Darren didn't let her finish. His hands found their way to Kara's waist, pulling her closer to him. She was dragged down from the couch and into a sitting position on the floor with him. She gasped, thinking to herself how hot that was. Darren felt how bare she was becoming with him. More and more vulnerable as he took charge over her naked body. They gazed at each other for a time-frozen eternity. Kara could feel his passion and Darren could feel the heat radiating from her body, her heartbeat racing against his chest. He leaned and was the one to kiss this time, attacking her red lips with his. Kara kissed her, rubbing her hands around his neck and back, his shoulders, his biceps. Oh, she thought to herself voraciously. His strong, thick biceps. After a while, Darren broke the kiss, trailing his lips down her neck, eliciting a soft gasp from her. "You're so beautiful," he murmured. Kara's eyes widened, shocked by the statement. She felt her beating heart fall to her stomach, pounding even harder. She gazed at his face with the utmost rush of emotions. In her mind, she told him she loved him. That he was the best person she'd ever known. That she didn't want to know how it felt when his hands were not on her body ever again. But her trembling lips couldn't let her say any of that. Not yet. She had to make do with her thoughts. Darren moved his hands and grabbed the roundness and profoundness of her full breasts, squeezing them gently once more. Kara's breath hitched, her eyes never leaving his. He lowered his head once more and his lips this time found her collarbone. He went lower, lower, down the middle of her breasts and then her breasts themselves, his tongue circling her nipples hungrily. Kara arched her back, a soft moan escaping her lips. Her head fell on the sofa behind her as she tried to catch her breath. Darren was so madly good with foreplay. He took her nipple into his mouth, sucking gently, his hands cupping her breasts. Kara's hands found their way into his hair, pulling him closer. Darren moved lower, his lips trailing a path down her stomach. He could feel her body trembling under his touch. "You're so beautiful, Kara," he said, his voice hoarse. Kara bit her lip, her cheeks flushed. There he went. He said it again. Why did she feel her heart thump each time he complimented her like that? She reached for Darren's shirt, unbuttoned it completely and pushed it off his body, his chest and abs glistening before her. In a trance of romance, she reached for them, not knowing which to choose at first. Her hand rested on his chest and she caressed it smoothly before lowering to his abs and then lower, and lower, to his cock. Kara wrapped her hand around it, her thumb brushing over the tip. Darren let out a low groan, his hips thrusting forward slightly. "You like that?" Kara asked, a smirk playing on her lips. Darren nodded, his eyes locked onto hers. "Come here," he said, his voice a low growl. Kara got up from the sitting position, her hand still stroking him like she didn't want to let it go. Darren guided her to her knees, his cock now at her eye level. Kara looked up at him, her eyes filled with desire. She leaned forward, her tongue flicking out, licking the tip of his cock. Darren let out a shuddering breath, his hands finding their way into her hair. Slowly, she took him into her mouth, her lips wrapping around his shaft. At first, she moved slowly, her head bobbing up and down. Then, Darren's grip on her hair tightened, and his hips began to move in sync with her movements. "Fuck, Kara, he groaned, his eyes closed. "You're so good at that." "Thank you, Mr. NGH. Duckling." Seeing he loved it, Kara picked up the pace, her mouth moving faster. Darren could feel his orgasm building, his body tensing. The sounds of his cock sliding down her throat, saliva splashing out of her mouth, and the choking at intervals all came together to give him the most amazing cock-thrilling experience. He looked down at her, his breath coming in short gasps. "I'm going to come," he warned, his voice ragged. But Kara didn't stop. In fact, her mouth moved faster, and her hand joined the fray, stroking him in sync. It built up in his balls, and once they clenched, Darren let out a low groan. His body convulsed as he came, his seed spilling into Kara's mouth. Once he was done, he pulled his cock out of her mouth. A few drops of it fell off her lips, but she swallowed it all, her eyes locked onto his. Darren gazed at her, trying to catch his breath. "That was amazing," he said, his voice breathless. Kara smiled, her body pressed against his. "I'm glad you thought so," she said, her hand reaching down to stroke his still hard cock. "Can you still go after that?" she asked in a pleading tone. "MHM." Darren looked down at her, chest rising and falling. Then he smiled. "Ugh. Ugh. Ugh. Oh my GNGH. Kara cried out, her hands gripping the cushions tightly as Darren pounded harder and harder into her, his hips slapping against hers with each thrust. The sound of their bodies coming together filled the room, Kara's moans and Darren's grunts creating a symphony of desire. "Deeper," Kara gasped, her voice breathy. "Yes, deeper." Darren obliged, his thrusts becoming deeper, harder, his cock hitting all the right spots inside her. Kara could feel her orgasm building, her body trembling with anticipation. She pushed back against him, meeting his thrusts, their bodies moving in perfect sync. "Ayo. Oh. You're making my entire body shiver." Darren reached around, his hand finding her clit, rubbing it in time with his thrusts. Kara screamed, her body convulsing as her orgasm hit her like a freight train. Darren continued to fuck her, his own orgasm building with each thrust. "Ah, yes. Mr. Duckling." The morning light seeped through the half-drawn curtains, casting a soft glow over the bedroom. Darren sat on the edge of his bed, one foot resting on the wooden floor, the other tucked under his knee. A steaming mug of coffee rested in his hand, tendrils of warmth curling into the air. His laptop was open beside him, but his eyes weren't on the screen. Instead, his attention was fixed on the translucent purple interface hovering before him. The investor system had arrived with some announcements. A soft chime rang in his ears, followed by a string of notifications appearing in front of him. "Congratulations. You have completed weekly quest, super profit, reward, 80% discount on next major purchase, valid on purchases above $5,000, Darren raised an eyebrow. That was significant. An 80% discount on a big purchase? It would be wise to save this for a very, very big purchase. Seeing that there was no limit and $5,000 was the least price, then he could very well buy something of $10 million at the price of 20%, he smirked. That was insane for a mere weekly quest. His first 3 weekly quests had given him meager cashbacks and double item purchase, having twice of an item purchased below $3,000. Maybe the 4th week's reward was usually bigger because it was the last in a month. Not thinking much of it, he returned to the system. "Congratulations. You have completed monthly quest, building a foundation, reward, multi-saving interest. Any money stored in your savings this month, untouched, will be tripled by the end of the month." His fingers tightened slightly around his coffee mug. Tripled. If he dumped $100,000 into his savings, he'd have 300 by next month. $1 million? 3 million. This felt ironic coming from a system that told him that money stored in a bank was being wasted. But he understood that the system only wanted him to keep a fair amount. But with the temptation of it being tripled, Darren was also considering just dumping 10 million into the savings. Congratulations! You have completed monthly quest, no debt, no stress, reward, elite credit status, enjoy premium borrowing perks, including easier loan approvals, lower interest rates, and superior deals when purchasing properties or businesses with loans. Darren exhaled slowly. Elite credit status. He knew what this meant. Last month was just the beginner's stage. With a reward like this, the system was certainly expecting him to go all in on investor mode. This wasn't just about buying things, it was about power. If he played his cards right, he could take out massive loans, flip assets, invest in high-value properties, and walk away with millions while paying barely any interest. Especially when he knew the kinds of business that were going to be successful. A deep satisfaction settled in his chest. He was moving up. And fast. Perhaps it was time to start that business company. A final message popped up. It is advisable to check your profile status at the start of every month. Darren nodded slightly. It has been a while since he checked his profile status. With a thought, he opened his status window. A familiar panel unfolded before him. Host profile, Darren Steele, age, 21, assets, cash, $25,876,000, checking, personal belongings, $5,670,600, liabilities, debt-free, net worth, assets minus liabilities, $31,546,600, $0 equals $31,546,600. Active investments, BTC, business owned, non-portfolio summary, stocks, 0 cryptocurrency, $1,500,000. Physical assets, 0. Expenditure log, monthly expenditure, money gained, $30,187,000. Money spent, $4,311,000. Reputation tracker, public reception, mystery investor, rivals, fear, no business rivals, allies, loyalty, Leonard Holloway, B+, financial milestones, first $1 million net worth, unlocked first profitable investment, unlocked first business acquisition, locked. Legacy counter, jobs created, 0 companies disrupted, 1 rivals defeated, 0 quests, weekly quest, mega makeover, no more life in the shadows. Begin to reinvent yourself and your lifestyle as a millionaire investor. Monthly quest, seeing is believing. Many investors prefer solid investments as they're more trustworthy. But who says you can't do both? Invest in 3 solid products, start of an empire, create your business company, and begin scouting and hiring of employees. Congratulations, you have unlocked an achievement. Achievement unlocked, Bitcoin millionaire. You registered a stunning growth in only 1 month. You are a millionaire true and through. Darren scanned through the information, taking note of the steady climb in his progress. His wealth had grown exponentially. His skills had improved. The money he took from the Red Fang and the one he won in the gamble was what greatly increased his fortune. They would be of great help in the multiple investments he had planned this month. And even better, he didn't have that pitiful achievement anymore. Achievement unlocked, Bitcoin millionaire. You registered a stunning growth in only 1 month. You are a millionaire true and through. A soft exhale left his lips. This was better. Hey! He heard a voice. Darren turned his head toward the doorway. Kara stood there, wearing nothing but his white button-up shirt, which barely reached her thighs. Her arms were crossed, her head tilted slightly as she studied him. It seemed she'd been there for a while. Hey, he replied, narrowing his eyes slightly. How long have you been there? Kara smacked her lips. You do this thing where you just stare into space like you're reading something I can't see. You know that, right? Darren didn't answer. He took the last sip of his coffee, set the mug down, and exhaled. I'm hungry, he muttered as he got to his feet. He walked past her toward the kitchen. Behind him, Caro let out a dramatic gasp. "Not even a kiss," she called, following after him. Darren turned back slightly and just smiled. They both entered the kitchen. Darren opened a cupboard and pulled out a jar of beans, changed his mind and returned it. Caro leaned against the counter, arms folded, watching him with a lazy smirk. "So," she drawled, "last night was interesting." Darren didn't react. He grabbed a pan from the rack and set it on the stove. Cara's smirk deepened. "I mean, for someone so calculated, you sure didn't see that coming, huh?" He popped open a container of eggs, deliberately ignoring her. She laughed. "Oh, come on, Mr. Duckling. You're really gonna act all stoic now?" He cracked an egg into a bowl. "Are you going to help me breakfast or just standing there running your mouth?" Cara gasped, placing a hand over her chest. "I see. So we're making breakfast together now." She smiled. "You're lucky I happen to be a great cook." Darren gave her a sideways glance. "Is that so?" "Yeah." She walked over, snatching the spatula from the counter. "Step aside, rookie." Darren didn't move. She tried to push him. He didn't budge. "Okay, what the hell do you feed yourself?" she muttered, giving up. "Protein." Cara rolled her eyes. "Of course." She grabbed a loaf of bread and turned toward the toaster. "Fine. I'll make toast. Can't mess that up, right?" Darren tossed in another egg. "I wouldn't put it past you." She gasped. "You dare underestimate me?" "I'm just saying." At that moment, the smell of something burning filled the air. Cara turned to the toaster. Smoke curled from the slot. Darren raised an eyebrow. Cara sighed. "I hate you." He smirked. She grabbed the toast, which was basically charcoal, and set it on a plate. Darren plated the eggs. "All right, I'll accept your eggs," Cara said, leaning against the counter. "But just so you know, I totally could have made breakfast. I just didn't feel like it." "Sure." She pointed at him. "Mock me again, and I'll burn your whole kitchen down." Darren chuckled softly, shaking his head. Then rieing. His phone vibrated against the counter. He glanced at the caller ID. The name on the screen made him pause. Allison. He stared at it for a moment. Huh. He had almost forgotten about her. Cara noticed his change in expression. "Who is it?" Darren picked up the phone. "A friend," he said simply. Cara raised an eyebrow. "And this friend is?" Darren didn't answer. Instead, he answered the call and put the phone to his ear. "Hello."